So, Kakadosh Boker Tov, we're just going to be continuing with the Daf Yomi. This is Daf Kafchet Amud Aleph 28a1. We are on the bottom of Kazayin Amud Bet. We're going to start from there where it says, Umi Amar Abaye, does Abaye actually hold that the Gim are Gidule Karka Ninu? That the Gim fish are considered Gidule Karka? V'Amar Abaye says, Achal Putita. If a person is going to come and he's going to eat a sheretz, which is a type of a creepy crawler, but in the water, called a putita, Loke Arba, he's going to get 4 lashes. Nemala, if he's going to eat an ant, Loke Chamesh, he's going to be 5 lashes. Right? Sid'a, if it's going to be a hornet, Loke Shesh, it's going to be 6 lashes. Mim Ita, now if you're going to tell me that fish are considered Gidule Karka, if you're going to tell me that, Putita Nami Lilke, you should get it also because of Mishum Sheretz HaSholetz Alaretz. So why did you only tell me it's going to be 4? It should really be 5 because it's also Sheretz HaSholetz Alaretz. Okay? Ela Amar Ravina, but rather Ravina says, Ofot Ika Benaihu. The Ofot is the difference between the two Braitot. Lemanda Amar, according to the Manda Amar that says Primi Pri Vigidule Karka, that it's a fruit from a fruit and it's Gidule Karka. Haninami Gidule Karka Ninu. These are also considered Gidule Karka. Lemanda Amar, and according to the Manda Amar that says Vlad Vladot Haaretz, Hani Ofot Minakak Nivru. The one that says that it's going to be Vlad Vladot Haaretz, right? He says these are fought or rakak nivru. They were created from the rakak. Okay, so man de marbe ofot maitame, umay de mamet ofo maitame. What's the reasoning to include birds, and what's the reasoning to exclude birds? What's the reasoning for each one? So says the Gemara, man de marbe ofot, the one that's going to include birds, kasavar he holds klala batra davka. Right, that he says the klala acharon is the one which is the ikar. So therefore it becomes a prat uchlal, okay? Which means it's a specification and then generalization. Nasa klal musaf al prat. So when you have a specification and a generalization, the generalization adds on to the specification. And then it adds everything. V'ahani klale kama. And the klal rishon is lemiute kol delo damile mishetzadin, is coming to exclude anything which is not comparable by both sides. Okay? So one more time. Klal, ufrat, uchlal. Generalization, specification, generalization. Then we say, in such a case, what do you do? Klal, ufrat, uchlal, and a kenaprat. So you go by the specification. However, though, if you're going to tell me that the second generalization is the ikar, so therefore, you only have a specification generalization. So therefore, the generalization adds more things. So what was the first one, the first generalization that wasn't the ikar? He says there, it has to be compared on both sides to the specification and the generalization. So he says, and the one that holds that we are excluding birds, klala kama davka. The first one, the first generalization is the main one. So then it becomes a klal ufrat, that means basically it becomes a generalization specification. So therefore, you're only going to come and you're only going to say that it goes into the specification. Hani in these things, yes. Midi acharine, everything else, lo, no. Ve'ahani klala batra. So why do I have the third generalization? The rebuye kol de dami la mishloshat stadim. It has to be something which is compared to all three. So it has to be primi pri, that's one thing, a fruit from a fruit, gidule karka, and vlad vladot haaretz, but not birds. So therefore, those are the 3 things that you need in order for it to be good. Okay? Next. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmed Rav Shmuel said this is the 2 dots. Everyone's with me? Okay? So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. So Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmed Rav Shmuel Bar Shila Mishmed Rav. Says Rav Yehuda the name of Rav Shmuel Bar Shila the name of Rav. Me'arevin befa'apuin uvechal galgalot uvegudganiyot. Says you're allowed to do an eruv with different types of vegetables which are fitting to eating. So there are pa'apuin, I don't know what those are, or chalaglegot or gudganiyot. Let's see. Okay, it says here hu min yerek. We don't know what it is. Pa'apuin. Chaloglegot is regela, porcelain, parsley maybe?
Purslane, yes, purslane.
Parsley?
Purslane. And the last one is coriander.
Right, kuzbera. Yeah, kuzbera is coriander. Okay. So those are those. The first one, nobody knows what it is. Okay. Avalo bechaziz, but not with a grain, which was how do you call it? Which was niksar, which was reaped. Yeah, when it was still a vegetable. Velo bekafniot, and not with bad dates, which were not ripe yet. Okay. So says the Gemara, uvgudgudiyot, which this is a coriander, right? Mima aravino, you're allowed to do an eruv with that. By the time we learned in the Braita, gudgadiniyot merube banim, right? That the ones that they have yeladim, yeah, yochlu, you're allowed to eat it. Chasuche banim, if it doesn't have children, lo yochlu, you're not allowed to eat it. Right? Why? But then it's going to be mima etet zera, which means this is incredible. Coriander, if you already have children, you're allowed to eat it because there's no problem. But if you don't have children, you're not supposed to eat it because it minimizes the semen in the human body. Right now, if it would become hard, like a piece of wood, okay, so then they shouldn't also eat it because then it makes it bad, right, for everybody basically. So if it's not good for as a food, so why would you be able to use it as an eruv? That's the question. So tirgema, so he came and he explains the word ashelok shulezera, which has nothing to do with, right, that it wasn't with cooked with the what's it called, with the zraim. That's what it says over here. Murube banim. Okay, which means, basically either the ones that are doing the eruv with this, they already have children, or, right, it was never cooked with the zraim, so therefore there's no problem. If you want, you could answer another answer. Where we were talking about that it's only not fitting for people that don't have children. But it's still fitting for the people that have children. So didn't we learn in our Mishnah that you're allowed to do an eruv, right, for yain, wine for Nazir, even though he can't drink it, or Israel truma, which he cannot eat it can only be eaten by a kohen, right? Chazilahai, but why? Because even though it's not fitting for these people, it's fitting for the other people. So to here, it's not fitting for these people, it's fitting for somebody else. Okay, by Tema Rav you could answer. Ki Kama Rav, when did Rav say this? Which a type of a guganiot, right, which come forth from a dye, which do not actually cause any harms. So says the Gemara, chaziz lo, you cannot do it with chaziz. Remember, chaziz was the grains which was reaped before when it was still a vegetable. So it says over here, you're allowed to, keshut is usually, I don't remember if it was leeks, hops, it says here. Hops and chaziz, right? And you're allowed to make an eruv, and you make a bracha on them. So you see from here, right? Not like we said above that you're not allowed to do an eruv with them. You're even allowed to make adaman. You're allowed to make an eruv with it. Says the Gemara, it's not a question. One was before Rav came to Bavel, and one was after he came to Bavel. That means why? Because after he went and he saw that in Bavel they did eat it. So then he retracted and you say you're allowed to make an eruv with it because you're allowed to eat it. You eat it. So says the Gemara, what? Bavel is the majority of the world? That means because in Babylonia they eat it, now the entire world you're allowed to eat it. But Tanya, we learned in the Braita, hapol. What is a pol? A type of vegetable, right? Ve'aseora ve'atiltan, and barley and tiltan is chilba. What is chilba? Fenugreek. Yeah, fenugreek. Shezran liyerek, that you came and you planted it for a yerek. Batla dato etzel kol adam, so it's going to be batla dato etzel everybody. So he says lefichach, therefore zaran chayav, if you planted it, you're going to be chayav. Virakam patur, and the yerek is going to be patur for maaser. Hashachlaim v'agergir, when we're talking about different types of vegetables, which is cress and garden rocket, right? Mitasirin yarak vezera, you're going to be chayav in maaser. Zaran lazera, if you actually planted it for the different fruits, mitasran zera v'yerek. So then you're going to do it whether it's going to be a vegetable or not. You're going to be chayav. So says the Gemara again. Ki kamar Rav. When did Rav say this? Kavchet amubet 28b. Bidginuniyata, with chaziz that is growing in a garden. Okay. So says the Gemara, zera gargil lemay chazi. What's it fitting for?
He meant the garden variety, not growing in a garden. The garden variety means the average, everyday, normal one that you see everywhere.
Okay, so it's the garden variety. Okay, fine, very good. So it says over here, zera gargir, thank you. Right, zera gargir lemay chazi. So he says, what is it fitting this zera gargir? So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Sheken Rishonim Shelo Yeh Lahem Pilpelim, people that they didn't have pilpelim, Shochakin Oto, they used to crush it, Umatpilin Bo Tatzli. And then it says, since it's fitting too, so they used to dip it. They used to use it like a dip. So therefore, that's why you're going to be chayav in a maaser, because it was fitting for this. It's talking about like the seeds of the gargir. That's what it says. So somebody that didn't have pilpelin, they used to come and use it instead of like different types of how do you say pilpelin, like gamba. In English, it's called like peppers and things like that. So they used to crush it, right, and then they used to use it. Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Zera, when he was very, very weak in learning Torah, he used to sit down at the entrance of Rabbi Yehuda Barami. Yeah, Amar, he said, Kinafki v'ale Rabbanan, because at least when the rabbis come in and out, ekum mekamayo, at least I will stand up, and therefore I could receive a word. Meaning, if I'm too weak to learn, at least let me stand up for Talmidei Chachamim, and if I stand up for the rabbis, I get a mitzvah. Yeah, nafekati yinuka d'verav, so came out as a child that was learning in the yeshiva. Amar le, he told them, Maya Gemara Rachbach. So he asked him, what did your rabbi teach you? It was by the way, it was very, very common that many times, like as a segula type of a thing, they used to ask children, what are you learning? And according to what they would tell them, it would be like a sign for themselves. So Amalei, he told him, Keshut borepri adama. Keshut, which is, I think it's leeks, no? That's how it's translated in English? Or how does it translate?
Hops. For making beer. Hops.
Okay, thank you. Hops. So hops is borepri adama. Chaziz is shakol niya bidvaro. Amalei tells him, Reb Zera, Adra, but the opposite. Ibcham is stubborn. The exact opposite is more logical. Hai me'ara kamarbe. The karka, it's getting it. The hops and everything are getting it from the karka, and therefore it should be beredama. Right? Sorry, this is not the hops. The other one, the chaziz. The hops me'avira kamarbe is getting it from the wind, from the air. Meaning anything from getting the air, that should be shakol niya bidvaro. But not the hop. You flipped it around.
Like a mushroom.
Yeah, like a mushroom, exactly. Or like the hydropox, I forgot what they're called. The vegetables that they grow in the air
Hydroponic.
now. Hydroponic. Very good, hydroponic. So it says, V'hilchata kinuka d'verav, but the halacha is like the children of the d'verav. Why? Maitama, what's the reasoning then? Hai gamar peri, the hops is the end of the fruit. So since it's the end of the fruit and it's still considered a pri, you make borei pri adama, it's still a fruit. The high, but the chaziz, it's not the end of the fruit, it wasn't ripe. And then you cut it down. So says that, so that's why it's shakol niya bidvaro. But 1 second, what about where it gets its nourishment from? Umayde kamarta, that what you said, the high, me'ara karabe, that is getting it from the land, the high ma'avida karabe, and this is getting it from the air. Lohi, it's not true. Keshun nami me'ara karabe. The hops also get it from the ground. Because if you see that if you're going to take it out in the right, that's what it says here. If you're going to take it out, the siach shalav tzumeach keshut, umayte keshut, that's going to die. So it doesn't grow in the air. If it would grow in the air, you don't need it in the ground. The fact that you pick it up from the ground and now it's going to die, that's a proof that it still gets its nourishment from the ground. Capish until here? Okay. Kafniot. What was kafniot? The bad dates. Uve kafniot Eiruvin. You're not supposed to do eruv on kafniot, on bad dates. Vatanya, we learned to write the kor. Kor is something which is added onto the palm tree.
Hearts of palm.
Hearts of palm? Okay, so the hearts of palm. Nikach bekesef maaser. You're allowed to buy it with money of maaser. Yeah, why? Because it's a pri. It's a fruit from a fruit, and it grows from the ground. But it's not going to be mitameh tumat ochlin. Right? Why? Because sometimes it just leaves it there until it becomes hard like a wood. Bekafniot, nikachot bekesef maaser. They are purchased with money maaser. Mitameh tumat ochlin. Rav Yehuda says, kor hareu ka'etz lechol dvarav. It's like a wood for everything, a piece of wood. It's like a tree. Ela shenikach bekesef maaser, but you are allowed to buy it with money of maaser. Right? V'kafniot and kefri lechol evreim, and the kafriot are like a pri. It's like a fruit for everything. Ela sheputura min maaser, but it's patur for maaser, because it never finished. It never became ripened. So you see from here that if it's going to be mitameh tumat ochlin, which means it's 100% food, so why can't you come and make an eruv with kafniot? And you just told me that you cannot make an eruv with kafniot. So answers the Gemara, hatam ben nischane. We're talking about male palm trees, right, that the pri, right, that the fruit is kafniot, and therefore they will never become tmanim. They are always like that. They will never become full dates. This is what it becomes, these bad dates like this. So that's why it's going to be metamet tumat ochlin, and you're allowed to make it like an eruv, right? You're allowed to make an eruv from these types of kafniot. So says the Gemara, if so, and this Rabbi Yehuda should have said that it's going to be paturot from maaser. Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo uzkiru pageh batyuneh. We didn't speak about figs, right, which are not 100%, which they're called batyuneh, which means that they weren't ripened. Ela linyan maaser bilvad. It's only to do with maaser. Pageh batyuneh, right? Ve'ahine detuvita. We're talking about figs which were not ripened, or kafniot, right, which are males, which means that they're not ripened because that's just the way that they are going to become always. Chayavim b'maaser, they're going to be chayav b'maaser. So you see from here, the Rabbi Yehuda holds kafniot of the kalim zecharim are chayav b'maaser. So if so, when Rabbi Yehuda said the kafniot are paturim min maaser, obviously we're not talking about male palm trees, right? But the one place he's saying it's chayav, and now you're saying it's patur. What's going on? Ela leolam lav b'nisrael. So obviously we're not talking about the male palm trees. Right? V'linyan tumat ochlin shanet. Tumat ochlin is different than iruv. Kedam Rabbi Yochanan, like Rabbi Yochanan says, if you could come and you could make it sweet by roasting them in the fire, so therefore hachanami, therefore it's going to become metamet tumat ochlin, right? Because you could come, but to do with eruv, they have to actually be a food before you actually fix it. Meaning, if I want to make an eruv out of these things, it already has to be a food without fixing it.
Were the green dates edible from the male trees? Yes or no?
I could not understand you. What?
The green dates from the male trees, without cooking, are they edible?
Put it like this. It's the maximum that you're able to ripen. However, though, you could only eat them when you sweeten them in the oven, meaning when you roast them. So therefore, to do it tumat ochlin, that's already tumat ochlin. Why? It was the fact that you could sweeten it and you could make it edible, that's already okay. But to do with the eruv already has to be edible from the beginning. It cannot be that it only becomes edible after I fix it and now I can make it eruv. No. To do with the ilchot eruv, right now it has to be edible. Right? So right now, from it comes to the dates from the palm trees, they're not edible from these male palm trees. But to do with tumat ochlin, it is tumat ochlin because I could make it fit. Where did I mention this concept of Rabbi Yochanan? Ahad Tanya, this is what we learned in the Braita. The shkedim amarim, to do with bitter almonds. Tanim, we're talking about small ones. Chayavim, they're going to be chayav maaser. Gedolim, when we're talking about the big ones. Chayavim, they're going to be chayav. Tanim are going to be pturim.
Backwards. The large ones are exempt from maaser.
Sorry, what did I say?
That you have to bring.
Sorry, maybe I switched it up. One more time. Shkedim amarim, the bitter almonds. If they're small, you're going to be chayav maaser. If they're big, you're going to be exempt from maaser. Mitukim, if they're going to be the gemar, which means that they finished its produce, which means that it's like sweetened, right? So then the opposite. Yedolim chayavim, the big ones are going to be chayav, and the ketanim are going to be pturim. So basically, it all depends whether it's bitter or sweet. And you flip, right? You have to flip it around between the small ones and the big ones. By the bitter ones, small ones are chayav, big ones are patur. By the sweet ones, big ones are chayav, small ones are patur. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon says in the name of the Father, whether big or small, patur for maaser. Why? The big ones are going to be turim because they're bitter and they're not considered, right, food. The small ones are also going to be turim, even though you could eat it, because it wasn't finished. And some people say the opposite. Both of them are going to be chayavim maaser. He said, no, they're both going to be patur from maaser. Okay? According to Man Damar, that they're both going to be chayav, what is it fitting for? Right? Rabbi Yochanan says, the fact that you can make it fit by roasting it in the fire. Meaning the fact that you could put it in the fire and roast it, that's why it's going to be chayav and maaser. So Amar more says, Rabbi Yehuda says, kor, which are, again, kor is the palms, right? The palmito, hearts of palms. Okay? Harehu, usually we call them korah, right? In the halacha, it's usually not just kor, but okay. Harehu ke'etz lechol dvarav, it's like a piece of wood, But you could buy it with kesef maaser. So the Gemara says, Hainu Tanakama, it's the exact same like the Tanakama. Right? That even though it's not going to be considered food for tumat ochlin, you're allowed to buy it with kesef maaser. So Abaye says, no. The difference between them is that what happens if you cook them a lot, excessive cooking, or you fried it in oil. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says it's still like an etz lechol dvarav even after doing all this. But according to the Tanakama, now it's not anymore considered a tree. Now it's actually considered a food. Matkif la Rava. Rava comes and he asks, is there a mandamar that says shlako v'tigno lo? Are you going to tell me there's a mandamar that says that shlako v'tigno you're not going to be chayav? Tanya, we learned in the Braita, ha'or v'ashilya, the skins or the placenta of an animal, and metabim tumat ochlin, it's not metabim tumat ochlin, or sheshelko, but if you took the skins and you cooked it, v'shilya shechishev alea, or a placenta that you thought of it like food, metabim tumat ochlin, it is going to become like a food. So if so, you cannot explain the words of Abaye that Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing in this case, but for sure Rabbi Yehuda is modeh that it is going to be mitameh tumat ochlin. Elama Rava, but rather Rava says he coming out the difference between them is beracha, to do with what beracha do you make on it. The Itmar it was stated kor, hearts of palm. Rabbi Yehuda says it's borei pri adama. Shmuel says shakol niya bidvaro. Rabbi Yehuda says borei pri adama because it's a food. Shmuel says shakol niya bidvaro because if you leave it there, it's going to become hard like a rock. So lo mevarachim elaveh, so you don't make a bracha borei pri adama. Okay, so Amar Shmuel.
What's halacha maaseh hadama?
So no, halacha maaseh. The Shulchan Aruch says it's she'akol because it's not the main part of the fruit. However, though halacha maaseh is borei pri adama for Sfaradim, and the reason why is because the Sfaradim hold is that since nowadays a lot of palm trees are
grown just for that purpose. Just for that
that's
purpose.
When it becomes adama.
It's like oranges being grown for juice only.
Yeah. Okay. Next. So Amar le Shmuel Rav Yehuda says Shmuel to Rav Yehuda, Shinena, sharp one, kavatach mistabra. It's actually more logical like you to say adama. That's non shesvolok. Look at radishes. Radishes also become hard. But we still make adama. Elohi, but it's not true. Snon, not the insha daita de pugla. People planted for that. So since people planted for that, it's borei adama. Dikla lo nati. People don't plant it for the korah. You see here, it does call it korah. It doesn't call it kor. Korah. That's how we call it in halacha as well. In Shulchan Aruch is wrote down korah. Okay.
Corazon.
Which one?
From corazon, heart.
Yeah, exactly like corazon. Exactly, korah. Yeah. So he says that's why shakol. That's why it's going to be shakol niyaviro. Again, nowadays people do plant it for hearts of palm, and the proof. Just look how many hearts of palm you see in the stores. Yeah. Ve'afagav the kalse Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Now, even though Shmuel praised Rav Yehuda and he said that it's more logical like you, the halacha is like Shmuel that you say shakol niyaviro. Again, nowadays it changed because they planted specifically for that. Okay. Next, 2 dots. Gufa. We already learned. You're allowed to make an eruv with the hops, with the chaziz, which was again not ripened grain. How much do you need of keshut in order to make an eruv? How much hops? Like a handful. So too here, it has to be a handful. Chaziz bekama. How much do you need chaziz in order to make an eruv? Like the shiur of agudat yerek, like a bundle of vegetables that they used to come and they used to put together. So you're allowed to make with a kelach, which is called kalya. Does anyone have what kalya is there in English?
It says the hard stalk of a certain plant.
Okay, of a certain plant, but it doesn't tell you which one. Okay, fine. Bekalya sakadai, do you really think with kalya? Ela biyarka de kalya. We're talking about the yerek of the kalya. The kama and how much? I'm Rav Yechiel kim lo yad, like a handful. So Rav Yirmiyah nafek lekuryata. Rav Yirmiyah, he came out to the kfarim to check the tvua, to check the grains. So ba'u mine le'arev bepulim, ma'u le'arev bepulim lachim. You're allowed to come and start doing an eruv with pulim lachim, with the beans, which are very lach, which are moist. Lo v'biyadeh, he didn't have an answer. When he went to the Bet Midrash, they told him, this Rabbi Yonah, he says, you are allowed to do an eruv with polin lachim. The kama and how much? Amar Rabbi Yechiel says kim lo ayad, right? Kim lo ayad. So Amar Rav Amnuna like a handful. So Amar Rav Hamnuna says, Marvim bitradin chayim. You're allowed to do with tered. Tered is like spinach. Silka. Okay?
No,
No?
beets.
Beets? Okay.
Raw beets. They can kill a healthy man.
Okay, so with exactly raw beets. So says the Gemara, Ini, is it so? Amar Rav Chasa says, it's going to kill someone. So he says the Gemara, Kaftet Amud Balef 29:1, Ha'u bevashi lo bashi. That's only if it's only cooked a little bit, right? But not fully. That means he said that if it's going to be not cooked fully, it could kill someone. But if it's actually not cooked at all, you could eat it and there's no problem. Okay? Fine. And then Blineda, we continue tomorrow.
Very nice, Rabbi.